Welcome to the Accomplish More podcast, created specifically for the small business owner who doesn't think small. I'm your host, Gayla Scrivener. This show is where you'll learn practical ideas, hints, tips, and tricks to help you grow your small business where you can leverage your time and to accomplish more. How to overcome the fears of building a team. Sharon, letting go is kind of scary, isn't it?
It is, in every aspect.
In every aspect. You know, it's just, I had a hard time letting go and starting to delegate, and I don't think I'm alone.
No.
I think that most small business owners and most people in general have problems with that in one respect or another.
Yeah. It's a big step to let go of anything of your own baby.
It is. And today we're going to talk about the 4 main fears that most people have as they grow their business and start to farm out tasks or delegate. And this applies not only for delegating to virtual assistants, but just asking for help in general. You may be, we have to overcome these fears, whether we're hiring somebody full or part-time. When I was managing in the medical office, just being a manager and letting go and just learning to delegate, you go through these fears. And so we're going to talk about the fears, the 4 main fears, and how to overcome them.
Great.
So let's dive right in. So in order to truly accomplish more and grow your business, you have to strategically plan and get help. Really, because there is no way in the 24 hours a day that we have to get everything that we want done.
Right.
Done. And to grow your business to be beyond what you can physically do yourself, you have to get help sometime, some way. But teams can come in all sorts of sizes and shapes, and whether it's somebody that helps you on a monthly basis, a yearly basis, or every day, or whether they're part-time, independent contractor, whatever the form is, you need help. So let's talk about the first thing that crosses your mind when you're thinking about delegating. The first thing that came to my mind was, I can't afford it.
Where's this money going to come from to help?
Exactly. I don't have the money, and so I've got to do everything myself. And most of the businesses that we work with, and from my personal experience in starting a business, I did not have a big bank loan. I just started, freelancing, and most of the businesses that we work with don't have a lot of deep pockets or anything like that. And they are doing everything. They, from being the actual service provider, or building the product, or
marketing,
product, bookkeeping, sales, customer follow-up, problem solver, computer IT person.
And the list goes on.
Take out the trash, clean the bathrooms, everything.
Right.
Everything. And so we don't feel like we can afford to get help for these things, because at first we may have more time than money.
Right.
When I started Scrivener Solutions, I had more time than money. I didn't have a large amount of clients when I first started. Most folks don't. Or they transition, they may have a full-time job and then they're working on the side doing something. And they need to get an income before they can hire somebody.
Yes.
But it just depends on what you're trying to do. And for me, one of the first things that I did was build a website. Well, that's something that I like to do and I kind of have an aptitude
Mm-hmm.
for. And so I started that. But my first website was, compared to what it is now, it was just terrible. And I was just learning that, but it was good enough.
Yeah.
I have an aptitude. I Googled things and I just saw how to build a website through WordPress, and that came naturally to me. Now, we have some clients that technology doesn't come naturally to them, and they're afraid of pushing all the buttons and figuring things out, and it takes them so gosh darn long to do. So what's smart for them is, how can I need to build a website and I can't afford the thousands of dollars to do that. Well, maybe they need to enroll in a quick class, an online course, have somebody to help consult them, and that's what we've ended up doing, in order to accomplish more. I think that people need to be enlightened or educated to help them actually do even some of the services that we do, and that helps them be able to manage things better. And we've got a client, Lila, that she just told me the other day, she's like, I want to build a website, but I just don't, it costs a lot of money, doesn't it? And I said, yes.
It does.
Because it's a tedious job. And you can spend as little or as much on a website as you want to. It's just like with anything.
Right.
And she has the ability to design her own and to think about things to what needs to go onto the website. And so what she has chosen is to hire us or hire me to go in and consult with her and tell her what buttons to push. And we meet on a regular basis as a consultant. And I give her homework and I show her what buttons to do, and I chunk it down.
Great.
And so then she stays focused, and then she can move on to accomplishing what she needs to, instead of spinning her, she's spinning her wheels saying, oh, I need to do this, but not getting anywhere because she doesn't know where to start. So she hired someone that is an expert that knows, well, this is the first thing that you need to do, and let's do this. Here's the second thing. And so for her budget, she's still doing it herself. She doesn't want to do it forever that way. But if she can just streamline and invest. Well, first thing, when we talk about money, I think people talk about, oh, this is going to be an expense. The word expense is kind of a negative thing. And really, for anything that we do in life or in business, we should really think about, anytime that we think of money and business and we hear the word expense, it's on our
ledger sheets.
It's on our ledger sheets, and we think of expense reports, and expense has this negative connotation. And I believe, and what Robert and I have shifted our thoughts, and when we consider spending money on something, we change our wording and say it's an investment. Because everything we do, it's an investment on where we're wanting to go in the future.
Where you're heading,
if we want to buy a new camera, it's an investment, really.
Yeah.
Maybe instead of an expense. So we've got that camera that we can use for fun, for business, whatever that may be, but that is an investment that we want to spend the money on.
Yeah.
Computers. It's an investment because it's a tool that gets us further along. Even if it's fun stuff, a trip.
Right.
It's an investment, and it's a cool thing because it helps us with our sanity.
Yes.
Right. And so I think it's important to overcome our first fear of saying, I have no money. Instead of thinking about that as the spending of money as an expense, which has a negative. It's like, where am I going to invest my money?
Mm-hmm.
And think of it as an investment. And when I started payroll for Scrivener Solutions, I freaked out.
Right.
I won't lie to you.
Scary.
It is scary. You were first person that I hired. Well, actually, Norma was, and and then you were shortly after. But I knew that for me, I was going to hire folks and put on payroll.
Mm-hmm.
And what was important to me was to have a payroll company so that we can turn in hours, and then all the taxes are done and figured.
Yeah.
And anytime I'm talking about taxes or anything like that, I just kind of melt a little bit.
It hurts.
It does hurt, but just even having to figure that out, and I know I'm smart enough to do it. I know I've done it before. I just hate. And that's a strong word, but
Yes, it is.
There are people out there that love, they're accountants that love to work with taxes.
Mm-hmm.
That's where they go. They live for figuring those numbers out, and figuring out taxes is not straight up math. I'm just
right. It's not.
And I know I've done it before and everything like that, but for me, having a payroll company do that and making that investment of a monthly fee, if you will, for them to figure that out, make sure all the forms are filled out, and send that money off to the various agencies on time on a quarterly basis. That's important.
Yeah.
Because I've had friends and clients or what have you that would say, oh no, I'll just figure it myself. And then, I'll set aside the taxes like you're supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
But then they fall short 1 week or 1 month, and so they dip into their tax fund, and then by the time taxes come around, then they don't.
They're really short.
Yeah, they're really short. And I've had some folks get into a bit of sticky situations.
Well, we don't like sticky with the taxes.
No. So, just being able to think about it ahead of time. Now, like I said, I was freaked out to have payroll, but what that did when I started payroll, I was planning on where the money was going to come from.
Mm-hmm.
And
it freed you up to do that.
It did. And you kind of have to have a plan before you hire somebody.
Mm-hmm.
It does save money that way if you kind of have a plan. But what I like about delegating in a virtual assistance realm, and I think that it's a smart use of our money, is to delegate little pieces of tasks.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, and many of our clients are not ready for a part-time or full-time person. Somebody that you need to dedicate either between 20 to 40 hours a week. Because when you hire somebody on a part-time and full-time basis, you are guaranteeing them a certain amount of hours. And that's part of the way that you retain them.
Mm-hmm.
If you have hours up and down and don't have that sense of consistency or dependability, then people are going to not work for you.
Right.
And so in the virtual assistants, when you can delegate on a project basis, that helps. It helps on your budget. And with virtual assistants, there are scenarios that it makes sense to do a project-based amount, and it's a certain dollar amount every month, and sometimes it's by hourly. And when you delegate to a virtual assistant, don't freak out on an hourly rate. It is going to be different than an employee.
Right.
And the reason why it's different than an employee is because they're an independent contractor. So you're not having to deal with the employment taxes, workers' comp. You're not having to deal with the desk that they sit at, the equipment they use. You're focused on the outcomes. And training time, you still will have to have training time, but that will be greatly reduced. So that saves you money.
Quite a bit, yeah.
And in a previous episode, we had talked about one of our first clients, Squeegee Squad. He worked out of his office, and he worked out of his home. He had a home office, and he didn't really want somebody in his home while he was out washing windows.
Right.
That was kind of
creepy.
But he also, when he first met me and we started getting to know me more because we were in the same circles of our networking. And then he came up to me one time and said, Gayla, I really, really need your help, but I just can't afford you. And I sat down with him because by that time we were starting to become friends and stuff because we had seen each other and so much. And I said, well, what is it? Where is your pain point? I mean, where are you overwhelmed? And he started breaking it down. It's like, by the time I wash windows all day and then I'm supposed to invoice and then I need to invoice, at least every once a week would be great. But, I start to get tired. And so then I'm not very consistent about it. I may do it a couple of times a month, or then this particular person I haven't invoiced in like 3 months, And I looked at him, I said, you could afford me if you would invoice like regularly.
Consistently.
So if I were able to help you invoice on a weekly basis, that's giving you consistency. It's better than what, ideally every day would be great. But for your budget, let's do it once a week. And we got into a schedule. Every Wednesday I was doing his stuff, and we had a process of getting his work orders, and then I had access to his billing system and his scheduling system, and he trained me on the process that he had started. And then I actually worked it up and kind of improved on it and just got into a routine, and it got to be less than 4 hours a week, about 12 hours a month, and for him in that budget worked fabulous.
Great.
And he was able to stabilize his invoicing. He was not focused. Well, first of all, he could get a little bit more sleep. Woohoo!
Yay! And get paid on a consistent basis.
Yes, he can get paid. I'd even do some collection calls for him. It's like, hey, did you receive that invoice? Because and that was really important. He didn't have time to do that. Or I would bring things to his attention that said, okay, what's going on with them? Because maybe you shouldn't wash their windows again unless they pay in arrears. And that was important information to know. And he was able to grow his business and focus on other things. And he was hiring more window washers.
Great.
And then later he needed somebody to answer the phones because he just couldn't do that anymore. And that allowed him to grow into somebody that's over 20 hours.
Wonderful.
And that's why chunking things down within your budget. What is it that you really need consistency with? What on your plate?
Right.
And what can you afford now? You don't have to get to the overwhelmed point. Well, I'll have to backstep. We as business owners, we will get overwhelmed one point or another, and then we just want to hire somebody and then like a magic wand, just do it.
Have it taken
care of. Do it, everything. So that just doesn't happen that way. Chunk it down because you'll have a better relationship with those people that you delegate to, and it's better on your pocketbook, and you can gradually move into what you need done. So there are so many tasks to chunk down, and we've talked about social media in the past, and we as virtual assistants, we're not here to run your business.
Mm-hmm.
You still have to be involved. And that goes right into the second number one reason. The second reason why people don't delegate is that they don't trust anyone.
Yeah.
I
That's
mean,
a big one.
it is. You hear horror stories all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and you may have been a part of, you've trusted somebody in the past and then you were burned.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens all the time. And you just have to overcome that and have faith. But you need to do your due diligence.
Yes. And also, like you always have your processes, make sure you go through those for anyone you might hire
Mm-hmm.
or, even as a virtual assistant, make sure you go through your own processes, an interview, getting to know them.
Exactly. And what is it that you're delegating?
Mm-hmm.
And what level of trust do you need? Now, obviously, for somebody that's working with money,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain amount of different trust.
Yeah.
And you hear all the time these horror stories of people. It's like, well, I've had this person work with me for 15 years, and then I figured out that they've been smuggling so much money from me or embezzling all this stuff, and I had to let them go,
Yeah.
and that is a testament of, are you not paying attention to certain things?
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you don't have trust. It's that you need to create systems in your processes to where things aren't tempting.
Mm-hmm.
Because good people in bad situations
Can be tempted. Yeah.
can be tempted, and something terrible might be happening with them at home. And if the opportunity's there to make things easier,
Yeah.
and it's just sad. And I know, I worked in a medical clinic, a big medical clinic with different specialties. And I worked in the billing office. And there was one of the receptionists that we figured out that was, for the lack of better words, stealing cash,
Yeah.
stealing copays. And what she would do was write the receipt and give the white copy to the patient for their copay. And if she received cash, she would pocket the cash and shred the other receipt,
Oh my.
so that it would not go to the main office.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when that other receipt did not come to the main office, we didn't have anything to post money to. So it looked like the patient did not pay their copay, right?
Yeah.
So what do? We bill them.
Mm-hmm.
What happened there? We get phone calls to say, I paid that.
Yeah.
Well, you have to prove it. Well, anytime you pay something, it's on the onus of the customer to prove that they actually paid it. Do
Yeah.
you have a canceled check? Was it misposted or anything like that?
Mm-hmm.
Well, once we figured out a pattern, and we had gotten more than one call, and unfortunately, I'm sure that some of those patients went home or paid the bill twice.
Yeah.
I hate that, but but the ones that were really paying attention and called us, and we did the investigating, and they produced that white piece of paper that said paid $25 cash. And then we noticed that it was the initials of that same receptionist every time. We couldn't prevent that theft. Later, I think that we had implemented a numbering system on our receipts. We evaluated our processes to help with the theft, because then we created the system that we have to account for every one of those receipts. Even if you had to void one, I needed the voided one, so we needed to make sure that they were all numbered. But at the time, they were not numbered receipts. Now, we had a loss there, and that was just kind of the part of of doing business.
Yeah.
But she did not keep her job.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
But we had processes that we could prove. And she did not have, she was not the same person that went to the bank,
Mm-hmm.
And I've been put in some terrible situations with past employers
Mm-hmm.
that I think I should not have been put into. And I don't think that, I'm appreciative, and I feel like I am a trustworthy person,
Mm-hmm.
but creating systems so that there's no temptation is important, because I was placed in a situation that I was the one doing the deposits, doing everything in QuickBooks, writing out the checks. They wanted me to even sign the checks. And I said, that's a terrible idea.
That's too much trust.
I am an employee, and I am not the owner of the business.
Yeah.
Don't put your employees or your staff into that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you don't trust somebody, then you need to look at the processes and take baby steps.
Yeah.
What somebody doing your social posts has a different level of trust than somebody handling your money.
Correct.
And I'm a pretty private person. So when, the person, Arlene, that does our bookkeeping, it took a while, even though I know her. I know her very well. But just to let go of that. Not that I didn't trust her that she was going to do anything.
Yeah.
That's certainly not. But can
It's
I
a
trust her?
vulnerability, though. No matter who the person is, they're seeing your finances.
Exactly. And can I trust her to do it the way I do it?
Yeah.
That's another level of trust. It's not stealing, but do you trust somebody to do the quality that you do? Well, I say again, you need to evaluate what is it that you're delegating, and start with something that anybody can do, not just you. Data entry.
Right.
You don't have to do all the data entry. There are people that you can train to do that. Formatting something on your website. If you are someone that's writing your blog, do you necessarily need to format it? Or if you have a newsletter, we do newsletters all the time. Some of our clients are great at writing. Some of our clients are in such an industry niche that we are not that we're not capable, but the learning curve. They know exactly their niche. And so they do their writing, and they're perfectly capable of putting their blogs onto their website, emailing, or even formatting their newsletters or what have you. But they have delegated and overcome their trust issues. It's like, okay, this is how I want it. And they might have told us the steps, but they need to step back and trust that the outcomes are what they want. So I go back to some of our clients write their own content. Some have let go enough to, we interview them, and then we try to find their voice. And the longer a relationship, the easier it is. And then they start to trust, like, oh, I don't have to edit so much. Or, they trust that we know what we're doing. We're going to be giving them the product, and we're getting the words down out of their head and onto to paper. Then we have some clients that we don't get very much direction from at all when it comes to like e-newsletters or newsletters. And we just learn from them, their industry, and we get to know them. And whatever we write is like, oh, that's just perfect, which is a great thing. But that level of trust, there are some that don't trust that we can write to the level that of their standards, which is perfectly okay. We're assisting them to get to where they need to be. And then there are some that they trust us fully
Mm-hmm.
with that part of their business,
Yeah.
because for them, that is not where their expertise is,
Right.
and they need to spend their time in where where they can shine,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to be where we can shine. And when I hire new team members for Scrivener Solutions, sometimes it takes a little bit to see where their expertise is, or where they shine, and where their focus needs to be. Because, you could hire a general virtual assistant, but don't expect and don't trust that they know how to do everything.
Right.
There's different levels that they can shine in one area, but they may have difficulty in another area.
Well, that's certain. I can't do everything you can do.
And vice versa. and so I think it's important to really evaluate, to overcome your trust issues. You have to really look inside of yourself as a business owner, and what is it that's holding you back. And if you need to grow, you got to overcome the trust issue.
Yep.
And you can't not trust anybody.
Right. You have to eventually trust someone.
And if you don't trust anyone, or if you've had so many bad experiences, you might want to check how you hire someone. And evaluate that more. What is your training process? What is your processes? Because I'm very grateful, and a knock on wood, I have had fantastic experiences on hiring folks all throughout my career. Now, I've made some mistakes, and I have been burned sometimes, but overall, I love creating teams, but I'm careful about hiring, and I'm slow to hire. I don't think I'm fast to fire, but that's the terms that you hear is slow to hire, fast to fire.
Yeah.
But I think that you have to give people a chance. And when something is not working, you really have to look inside. Are you communicating correctly? But if you have a gut feeling, like Brandy, for example. Brandy was the first virtual assistant that I had hired on through Scrivener Solutions that I had not met in person, or that I had known for a while.
Yeah.
And building that relationship, I think, is important for when we hire someone. And you may not be ready for someone right this second, but I know most of my jobs that I have gotten just kind of, it stems off relationships.
Yeah.
And I don't remember the last time that I've had to do like a resume. And I've helped people with their resumes, but all my cool promotions, my everything in my path, it had to do with relationships. I was 19 when I first got my real job and had to fill out an application in a doctor's office. But because my mom was like an administrator of a hospital several states away, I had no relationship with this doctor's office that I was going through. But she took a chance, a leap of faith. She's like, you're only 19. You're just a kid. But your mom has been in the industry. She is a hospital administrator. I think I'll take a leap of faith and trust that you, not that I was trained by my mom.
Right.
Or that never that I work at the hospital, but having that reputation that, she took that leap of faith. Yeah. Well, Brandy was the first person that I hired outside of who I knew in my circles. But how that came about was one of our clients had told her about us, and she and her husband was moving from that area to his job transferred him from West Plains, Missouri to Council Bluff, Iowa. And so she has two small children, two beautiful young daughters. And they, she was like, well, I need to get a job, but daycare is so expensive. And daycare compared from West Plains, Missouri to Council Bluffs, Iowa was a huge difference.
Yeah.
And she was accustomed to be working and putting them in daycare. And she's like, I just don't know if I can afford it. She was referred to us, and I went ahead and talked to her, and it's like, I don't have the hours that you want. And I was just perfectly honest. But during our conversation, something about her, I just really liked, and we made it work. And she was willing to start working for me to get her foot in the hole, to be able to work more hours. And we've increased her hours, but I also encourage her with other stuff so that she freelances on other design things. And that is super for her. And her work situation, she's super excited about because she can raise her girls. She splits her time. She's highly organized. And not only have met her once when she drove through Springfield and we had lunch once. I've only seen her face to face once. I have to trust that she knows what she's doing, and she asks questions, but it's up to me to open that communication up.
Yeah.
And then in order to trust that she knows things, I've opened up the doors. It's like, hey, any design stuff that you do for anybody else, if you just want to throw that at me, I'd love to see it. You know what that's done for me is, because I like to do design stuff, but I don't have the time to do everything.
Yeah.
So I tended to say, I can't trust anybody to do it the way that I'm going to do it. Well, with Brandy sending me information periodically or some of her work, I see it's like, oh, that's so cool.
She's doing great work.
She's doing great work. Yeah. I can see it opens up my mind, and now I'm trusting to delegate more to her. And it's kind of like, just building that relationship.
Yeah.
And so that I did not delegate everything to her at first. It just takes a longer relationship to build that trust. So there's a lot of different trust factors that we have to go through, but we have to go through them. And sometimes we have setbacks. I'm not going to lie. And you get disappointed, and then you think, I can't trust anybody, so I'm not going to hire anybody. But get over that, because it's just a moment, and you have to move on. The third thing that is a huge deterrent on delegating is that I hear all the time that's like, I don't have time. I don't have time to delegate. I am so overwhelmed. I just have to be doing it. And it's kind of counterintuitive.
It is.
And so you hire somebody. First of all, I'm too busy to find somebody. You always need to have your feelers out, I think.
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, start your business or always thinking that you're going to have help. You may be doing everything yourself at first, but as you build relationships and as you meet people, whether it's church or at the grocery store, or friends, family, networking group, keep your antenna out, because through conversations, you will find the right help when you need it. And because sometimes it is overwhelming to think, okay, now I've got to get a job application and a job description and stuff. Well, it is true that you should take the time to make a plan, because if you're going to delegate something, don't get into that hamster wheel saying, I just don't have time, and you just keep keep going.
Right.
You've got to step out of that hamster wheel and make a plan. Get a job description. What is that one thing that you want to delegate?
Mm-hmm.
And then have the realization that you need to train them.
Mm-hmm.
Or
they're not going to magically know what you need.
And even though they may know the steps, you need to know the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you may want to train them on the actual steps of what you want done. But sometimes you may not know. You just may know, like, I want to do an e-newsletter once a month. I don't know how to do that, but help me through that. So, we as virtual assistants can help through that process. But there's things that I might say, I want this done in this sequence, and I need to train you. This is the system I use, and this is what step 1, this is step 2, step 3. But so there's various ways of training, but what is very important is to know, at the very least, your company culture.
Mm-hmm.
We as business owners have the power of creating whatever culture we want. And if you start down a path that you don't want, you have the power to change it and correct it. Yes. So having the time to train somebody, you just have to make time.
Well, that will pay off.
It will. But if you think of this and creating policies and procedures, and policies and procedures can come in a lot of different forms, but policies on how things are done or what you want done, even if it's just an idea. I had, we were talking about Squeegee Squad. His invoicing was all over the place, and the ideal at the time that we were talking is like, I'm going to set a policy that the invoices have to go out once a week. In reality, it was all over the place. And so setting that policy and then training on how to do that, whether it was written down or I sat down with him for an hour or two one afternoon, and I wrote down all the notes. I eventually I wrote down a policy on all the steps. And then sometimes I made video.
Yeah.
Video tutorials. And we're really big on video tutorials. Because what I have found with virtual assistants, since we don't see each other, and I need to show you what's going on in my head, I use a service called Screencast-O-Matic.
Yeah, I love that.
And what that does, it's a very economical way to record what's going on my computer screen and be able to have my voice overlay on it. And so I'm showing you what buttons to push. It's a great tutorial. But I can show you what I need done, and that becomes part of our policies and procedures. It's also great for feedback, because what if I change my mind, or what if the outcome isn't what I was anticipating? Then I can do a recording. It's like, this is the way I was thinking. And it's a great communication tool. So, but when you sit down one time and outline the process, and it may take you hours to outline the process, get it all done. And because people get into the realms like, oh, it's just quicker for me to do it.
Yeah.
Why I should not delegate this because it's just quicker for me to do it. Well, if you keep in that cycle, you're going to have a ton of things that it's just quicker for you to do. And you're never going to accomplish the revenue generating stuff that you really need to. So these tasks that aren't necessarily revenue generating but are very important, it's the small things that become very important and need to be done on a consistent basis. If you sit down and outline and do the instructions that one time, or even if it's something on your computer and you're able to record the steps that one time and actually do it that one time for the last time,
then
it's perfect to
you
delegate.
have a perfect training tool.
Exactly. Always. And then you can set back. I think it's important once you start delegating all these little things, step back and just realize how much you're not doing anymore.
And refocus.
And
to
refocus.
Something.
And be appreciative.
True.
Because I am so appreciative each and every day of what you girls do for Scrivener Solutions, because it saves me. My time has shifted to other things that you can't do.
Yeah.
You're not the one that's going to the networking group and talking with the clients face to face and things like that. I need the behind the scenes type stuff to actually get the tasks going. The last thing that I hear the most about and what I've experienced is the fear of losing control.
Yeah.
Just letting go and not knowing how every single piece of your business is done, or if it's done. It's scary.
That's frightening.
It is. But when you create the systems and let the systems work.
And the trust.
Yep. And it all intermingles. When you have a schedule of things that you know that you have specific deadlines and having those expectations, then when you come back in, because you may feel like, I've lost control a little bit, but when you check on things, like, oh, it is being done.
It's handled.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
If it's not being handled, look at your systems. Is it something that you need to adjust the systems so that you can work in to make sure that things are done? But I know that I get some anxiety that, one of the tasks that Norma does is a weekly PR email for our networking group. And I was doing that every week. And I knew what events were happening in the community. I would go research to see what was happening. I would take in the new requests from people in the networking group and be able to post those on the calendar and do that weekly email, format it, and all that stuff. Well, that took a lot of time.
Yeah.
I mean, and there were systems, but it would take an hour or two each week. And that would be something that is like, you know what? That is perfect for Norma to do. And I could delegate that. And I trust her to do that. But now I go to networking meetings and honestly, I'm like, I don't know really what's going on. What are those events? Oh, next Saturday is this event. I used to know those things. And if somebody were to ask me, didn't you get that request? I don't know, because Norma handles it.
Handles all of it.
And so it's kind of scary that it's like, I don't know if I got that email. I don't know if it's processed, but she brings me questions when she's unsure, but we've got our systems down that it works.
Yeah.
And it's done. And I only have to do a certain small piece of review and things, but it's like magic. It becomes that it's not like, oh no, I've lost control. It's now, my perception is this happens like magic.
Yeah. Well, it's grown to that. So that's wonderful.
I think that people need to realize that you don't delegate the stuff that only you can do.
Yeah.
If you're building the business of something that only you can do, let me give Robert as an example. Robert, my husband, he co-owns Scrivener Solutions with me, but he has he also does leather work. It's his hobby, but it's also kind of a business for him. And he's the only one that can do that unique artistic work.
Beautiful work.
And but if he could do the social media posts for it, or he could delegate that. But he can't delegate the leather work.
Right.
You know, and because that's not uniquely him any longer. Now, he may grow a leather working business. I don't know. Let's say he grows a leather working business, but he hires somebody to do leather working. Well, it needs to be in a certain style and a certain quality that he expects, so that your business shifts. And I know that when I started Scrivener Solutions and me freelancing, what I can do, many other people can do, and I can train other people to do. But there's certain parts of the business with like marketing and what my beliefs are and everything that's uniquely me. But to format a blog post, I like to do that, and I'm good at doing that for our clients, but so are several of you guys on the team. And so that's something that can replicate. But what I have set up was that our clients at first, everything I was doing. Now I'm training my clients that, especially our new clients, I'm not actually doing the work. You're going to be forming relationships with, Brandy, Sharon, or, Norma, and knowing that they're doing the detail work. I'm helping coaching and setting plans and processes in place. And my role has shifted in the company. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with losing a little bit of control. And you have to let go of the reins a little bit.
Yeah.
And I don't think that I'm a control freak.
I don't either. But I've noticed that the more you let go of, the bigger your company becomes. And that came over time with the trust and the processes, but you have certainly let go in baby steps and grown in baby steps, or let go in large portions and grown in large portions.
I think there's a direct correlation that the more that you delegate, and you can delegate in a smart way, the more income you can realize. And so getting over those fears, no money, loss of control, no time, no trust. Those are very real fears. And I have all of them always. And just getting over myself, but being smart on who I delegate to, when and what I delegate.
Yeah.
And sometimes the timing, it needs to be right. So, all of these things that we've discussed today, some people I think perceive them as reasons not to delegate. But I think that they're just merely excuses.
They could be.
And there may be a fine line between reasons and excuses, but I really think that we just kid ourselves and we just make up excuses.
Yeah.
And so, like we've said before, it is a huge step to reach out and ask for help, but we've got to do it. And if you need help in your business, there's a lot to consider. And so you need to step back and just strategically look at your processes, build processes, and a little bit at a time, build those delegations. So, and when you work out those processes, you can overcome some of those fears. And being informed before making a decision is so important. So that's why we have a little free ebook on our website. It's called 5 Things You Must Know Before Hiring a Virtual Assistant. And I think the information in there is relevant whether you hire a virtual assistant like right now or down the line, or even if you're hiring somebody to come into your office. I think there's a lot of good information in that little ebook, and that's available on our website, scrivenersolutions.com. And if you don't know how to spell Scrivener, because people have a tough time with that, it's SCRIVENER solutions.com. And the link is in our show notes if you're on iTunes or anything like that. That would be fabulous if you'll hop over to our website and download that book.
Yeah.
And it'll give you ideas what to expect and what you need to overcome. So I hope you've enjoyed the show today and find the information helpful to get you on the path of accomplishing more. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and go over to our website and download that free book. And until next time, have a fantastic week.